A 73-year-old Illinois landlord stabbed a 6-year-old Palestinian boy 26 times, calling the family infested rats. 73-year-old Joseph Zuba, who rented out rooms in his Plainfield, Illinois home to 6-year-old Wad Hai Al-Fayumi and his mother, Hainan Shahid, both Palestinian Americans, suddenly told them on October 7 to move out, saying they weren't welcome anymore. He even threatened them, saying they needed to die, and had previously called the police, referring to Wad Hai and his mother as infested rats. Zuba forced his way into their room, pinned Hainan down, broke her teeth, and attacked her with a knife, all while her son watched in horror. Hainan managed to escape, locking herself in the bathroom to call 911. But then the nightmare turned to Wad Hai. Zuba turned his knife on the boy, stabbing him 26 times, leaving the knife in his body before walking away. Even though Wad Hai was rushed to the hospital, he tragically didn't survive. What do you think about this case? A child doesn't get to choose where they come from. What did he ever do to deserve this? Leave your thoughts in the comments.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
A mother drowned her 3 young children and then fled in a stolen car, but ultimately avoided criminal charges. The 3 children were just 6 months, 2 years, and 3 years old. On April 10, 2021, in the Reseda neighborhood of Los Angeles, 30-year-old Liliana Carrillo was accused of drowning her 3 young children in her apartment. The children's grandmother was the one who called the police. After committing the crime, Carrillo fled the scene and later carried out a carjacking in Bakersfield, Northern California. She was eventually arrested by police in Tulare County. Carrillo admitted to killing her children, claiming she did it to protect them from the evils of the outside world. Police discovered that she had a history of mental health issues, including depression. In the end, the judge ruled that, based on clear evidence from psychiatric experts, her actions were not driven by a rational state of mind. She avoided criminal charges but was ordered to undergo long-term treatment in a psychiatric hospital. Some people argue if she was truly mentally unstable, how was she able to plan a carjacking and attempt to cover up her crime? What do you think about this case? Share your thoughts in the comments below. A mother turned her daughter over to the police after finding out she killed someone for $60. Police responded to a call and arrived at the scene to find a man with a gunshot wound who had already passed away. Shortly after, they released surveillance footage of the suspect on social media. The next day, the suspect's mother came to the police station and turned her daughter in. 26-year-old Connie Hayes reportedly met a man at a gas station. The man offered her $60 in exchange for some fun time. Hayes told the police she never planned to actually go through with it. Instead, she shot the man, took his cash, and left the scene on foot. Desperate for money, Hayes said she spent $47 of it on hot wings for herself and her boyfriend after the shooting. It wasn't until the next day, when her mother saw the surveillance footage, that she brought her daughter to the police station. Hayes is now facing murder charges. Do you think her mother did the right thing by turning her in? Let me know in the comments.
I'm appalled and disgusted.
Once seen as the perfect mom, with millions of followers, family vlogger Ruby Frankie is now in prison for harming her children, a result her eldest daughter publicly celebrated. Ruby, known for her channel, 8 Passengers, gained fame by documenting family life. But in 2023, Utah police responded to a distress call and found her children had endured harm, including being deprived of food and water and subjected to harsh punishments. Her children, Russell and Eve, shared how Ruby forced them to do outdoor activities in extreme heat with no water or breaks. She used shame and manipulation to make them feel guilty, or not good enough, controlling their thoughts and behavior, while even withholding food and water as punishment. Disturbed neighbors reported these actions to authorities. Ruby called her children guilty and claimed they needed to repent. She also collaborated with Jody Hildebrandt, a controversial counselor criticized for extreme methods. In the end, Ruby was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Her collaborator, psychologist Jody Hildebrandt, was also sentenced to prison. When sharing becomes control and parenting turns into torment, can this still be called love? Share your thoughts in the comments below.
Not guilty of...
2 men were wrongfully imprisoned for 42 years and have finally been released. How should the government compensate them? 76-year-old Clifford Williams Jr. 64-year-old Nathan Myers were accused of attacking Nina Marshall back in 1976. Nina Marshall identified Myers and Williams as the attackers. Even though both men insisted they were innocent, they were still convicted and sent to prison. They had never even met Nina before, but no one in court believed their story, and they were locked away. While in prison, they tried multiple times to get their case reviewed, but every request was denied. They spent 42 years behind bars, losing not just their freedom but also their loved ones. William's mother even passed away during that time. It wasn't until the Innocence Project stepped in on investigators reopened the case. After a heated legal battle, their innocence was finally proven. If even innocent people can be wrongfully imprisoned for 42 years, how many others are still waiting for the truth? Share your thoughts in the comments. 76-year-old woman was sentenced for ending the life of her terminally ill husband, even though it was his request for her to pull the trigger. 77-year-old Jerry, unable to endure the unbearable pain from his illness, asked his wife, Ellen Gillen, to shoot him. He told her where to find the gun, and she retrieved it. But since Jerry didn't have the strength to pull the trigger himself, he asked Ellen to do it for him. Ellen sent her husband to heaven, saying that now, he would no longer feel any pain. She locked herself in the hospital room because she wanted to spend some time alone with him. When police tried to enter the room, Ellen fired shots to keep them away. 4 hours later, police used flashbangs to get inside, and Ellen surrendered, putting down the weapon. The judge sentenced her to 366 days in state prison, followed by 12 years of probation. She was also ordered to write apology letters to the police and hospital staff. Do you think Ellen is guilty? Share your thoughts in the comments.
You know, if this was a death penalty state, you'd be getting the chair.
This is the moment when the teenager who stole beer is facing the death penalty and feels completely helpless after they murdered a police officer. It all started when 3 teenagers were caught stealing several cans of beer. Officer Philip Dale Nix responded to the call, and when he intercepted the teen's car, they not only ignored his orders but also opened fire on the police car and the officer. Philip, caught off guard, was shot and bled profusely. He was later rushed to the hospital by his colleagues but couldn't be saved. Using surveillance footage from a convenience store, police identified the 3 teenagers, 20-year-old J. Amir Foster, along with 2 other suspects, Corey Blackwell and John Morrison. When Foster heard he might be sentenced to death, he lost control and insisted it wasn't intentional, claiming the gun just went off. Due to his outburst, the judge told him to stop with the pointless comments. The other 2 were also charged with second-degree murder and are facing decades in prison. For a few bottles of beer, they took a police officer's life? Do these teenagers really think life is as cheap as beer? What do you think?
Please help me! Please help me! Please help me!
5-month-old twin daughters were shot and killed by their father while in their mother's arms in Jacksonville, Florida. 22-year-old Megan Hyatt's home was invaded by her ex-boyfriend, who raised a gun and aimed it at the twin girls in Megan's arms. In an attempt to protect his granddaughters, Megan's father was shot and lost his life. Megan was unable to shield her daughters from the gunfire and was shot herself, leaving her blind. In front of her, her ex-boyfriend, who is also the father of the twins, executed the girls. After doing all this, he turned the gun on himself. Megan said her ex-boyfriend had been verbally abusive, and after she announced their breakup, he threatened to destroy everything she cared about. Since the incident, she has been plagued by countless nightmares and has developed post-traumatic stress disorder (PTSD), slowly working on her recovery. This is truly a nightmare. Why do innocent children have to endure such suffering? Leave your thoughts in the comments.
Not guilty.
A 14-year-old girl lied about her age and had sexual relations with a 19-year-old boy in a park, leading to the boy facing charges. 19-year-old Zach Anderson was charged with 4th-degree criminal sexual conduct. The incident happened in a park in Michigan, where he had relations with a girl he met online. Zach claims he didn't know the girl was only 14. She had said she was 17 on social media. After the incident, the girl's mother reported it to the police, believing her daughter had been deceived and threatened by Zach. However, the girl later admitted she had lied about her age and that she had actively participated in the relationship. During the trial, even though the girl's mother came forward to plead for Zach and the girl wrote an apology letter as evidence, the judge still sentenced Zach to 90 days in jail and placed him on the sex offender registry. Zach's lawyer informed family believe the punishment is severely disproportionate to the facts, and over 220,000 people have signed a petition in support of him on social media. Ultimately, Zach was placed on the sex offender list for 25 years, but recently a judge overturned his sentence. What do you think about this case? Leave your thoughts in the comments.
You wanna fucking take my kids from me and act like that? Fuck you and that fucking bitch!
Parents pretend to be grieving after allegedly murdering their 7-month-old daughter and even set up a fundraising request for food. South Carolina parents Caleb Nix 29 and KY and Nix 28 were arrested for the suspected killing of their 7-month-old daughter, Sage Nix. In December 2024, emergency responders found Sage unresponsive in their home in Japan, and despite attempts at CPR, they were unable to save her. The investigation revealed that after Sage's death, the Nix couple acted like heartbroken parents on social media and even launched a fundraising request for food from the community. This behavior raised public skepticism and intensified the investigation. The coroner determined that Sage's cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head, classified as intentional. She had multiple bruises on her body, indicating she may have suffered abuse. In the weeks following their daughter's death, the parents posted several messages online about Sage, which further fueled suspicion. Currently, the Nix couple is facing charges of murder and child abuse, and the case is still ongoing. The prosecution questions why they would choose to ask for donations instead of seeking direct help if they truly love their daughter. What are your thoughts on this case? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments. A mother was arrested for allegedly shooting a teenager in the face in front of her children, who are aged between 4 and 9. 30-year-old Brittany Griffith from Douglasville faces multiple charges, including aggravated assault and child cruelty, after the incident that occurred on a weekend along I-20. Police report that Griffith was driving with her 3 kids when she got into a confrontation with the 17-year-old victim's vehicle. Witnesses say Griffith followed the victim's car for about 15 miles before pulling up alongside it and firing at least one shot, hitting the girl in the face. The victim was sitting in the back seat at the time and is currently in stable condition. Authorities identified Griffith through a clear photo taken by one of the passengers in the victim's vehicle, which was shared on social media. Griffith turned herself in the next day. A mother committing such an act in front of her children is not just a crime, it's a dangerous example to set. What kind of impact will this have on her kids' minds? Share your thoughts in the comments. This man took the lives of 2 boys, aged 12 and 14, with a hammer, and he had been dating their aunt while living in their home. Mark Wilson was convicted of first-degree murder for killing 14-year-old Tate and then 12-year-old Robert Baker in August 2020. Wilson, who was dating the boy's aunt and staying at her house, shockingly murdered her and nephews with a hammer and even attempted to decapitate them. The boys' mother discovered their bodies the next morning when she called them to get ready for school. She testified that she saw Wilson sharpening a knife the night before, and that knife was the weapon used in the attack. The murder scene was described as chilling, and investigations revealed that Tate was awake during the assault and had tried to call for help, but was cut off before he could succeed. It's reported that Wilson's issues with the boy's aunt lead to this tragic incident. However, the defendant claimed that his own childhood abuse caused him to act this way, insisting that he wasn't in a clear state of mind at the time. Clearly didn't buy that story and recommended the death penalty in October. What are your thoughts on this case? Share your opinions in the comments. A serial killer who took the lives of 4 women fainted in court after hearing the verdict. Did he not think about the consequences when he committed his crimes? Anthony Kirkland from Cincinnati, Ohio, had previously served 16 years for killing his ex-girlfriend. A few years after getting out, Kirkland went on a killing spree. In just 3 years, he took the innocent lives of 4 women, 2 of whom were teenagers. Kirkland was arrested after his 4th crime because he was found in possession of the victim's watch and iPod. Even though Kirkland claimed he just found them, police conducted fingerprint comparisons and investigations that proved he was the killer. Further investigation also revealed he was responsible for 4 murders. As the judge announced his death sentence, he collapsed to the ground. In his earlier self-defense, he claimed his crimes were due to mental illness, thinking that would help him escape sentencing. But the judge didn't buy his lies. What are your thoughts on this case? Share your opinions in the comments.
I only got 264 days with my grandson. He deserved more than that.
A mother in Kent County, Michigan, was arrested and charged with murder for leaving her 8-month-old son alone in the bathtub. Around 3 p.m. on November 22, Olivia Miller called the police, saying her son wasn't breathing in the bathtub. When the officers arrived, they found the child lying on his back on the floor. Emergency personnel tried to save him and rushed him to the hospital, but unfortunately, they couldn't save his life. Miller claimed she just put her son in a few inches of water and went to another room to change clothes for about 5 minutes. But when she returned to the bathroom, she found her son's face submerged in the water. However, police discovered that the data on her phone showed the child had been lying on the floor for at least 20 minutes before they arrived. During that time, she had been using her phone and only called 911 21 minutes later. As a result, Miller was charged with manslaughter and sentenced to 1 year in prison. She can't understand why she has to be locked up after losing her child. It feels like a double blow to her. What do you think? Should she be in jail? Share your thoughts in the comments.
I only got 264 days with my grandson. He deserved more than that.
A mother in Kent County, Michigan, was arrested and charged with murder for leaving her 8-month-old son alone in the bathtub. Around 3 p.m. on November 22, Olivia Miller called the police, saying her son wasn't breathing in the bathtub. When the officers arrived, they found the child lying on his back on the floor. Emergency personnel tried to save him and rushed him to the hospital, but unfortunately, they couldn't save his life. Miller claimed she just put her son in a few inches of water and went to another room to change clothes for about 5 minutes. But when she returned to the bathroom, she found her son's face submerged in the water. However, police discovered that the data on her phone showed the child had been lying on the floor for at least 20 minutes before they arrived. During that time, she had been using her phone and only called 911 21 minutes later. As a result, Miller was charged with manslaughter and sentenced to 1 year in prison. She can't understand why she has to be locked up after losing her child. It feels like a double blow to her. What do you think? Should she be in jail? Share your thoughts in the comments. A Texas high school cosmetology teacher provided accommodations for troubled teens, but in reality, she forced them to service men for profit. After learning the truth, the father was furious. Disgustingly, this cosmetology teacher, named Kay Grigsby, forced these girls to service 5 to 10 men each night, with a requirement for them to make $1,000 a day. Police investigations revealed that 42-year-old Kay Grigsby was a teacher at Klein Ken High School. While she was forcing these teens into such acts, she even brought her own son along to enjoy the services as well. Her phone had records of hundreds of transactions with men. Only one victimized girl has come forward to SOAR in the school district to file a complaint, while the other 7 to 8 girls who were victimized have yet to speak out. As a result, Grigsby has made bail, while her son remains in jail. She even used her arrest to promote her efforts for school choice in the state. How ironic is that? Why didn't the school take immediate action once they learned about this? Isn't the safety of the students the top priority? Leave your thoughts in the comments.
Breaking news. A man pushed onto subway tracks in New York as train approaches. On Tuesday afternoon, 2 men jumped the turnstile to enter the 18th Street 1 train station. As they passed by a masked man standing nearby, the masked man first observed the 2 fare evaders before turning his attention to an orange-clad man standing at the edge of the platform, looking at his phone. Just as the train was approaching, the masked man suddenly turned and shoved the orange-clad man onto the tracks. The 2 fare evaders, shocked by the incident, fled back the way they came. The victim, 45-year-old Joseph Linsky, suffered severe injuries, including a fractured skull, 4 broken ribs, and a ruptured spleen. Miraculously, he survived by getting wedged in a gap between the tracks. The accused attacker, 23-year-old Kamal Hawkins, has been charged with attempted murder. Ironically, the most law-abiding person in the situation suffered the greatest harm. What are your thoughts on this? Leave a comment and let us know.
You stab, you stab, you stab, you stab, you stab until he was dead.
Kasi Borgai, a 17-year-old girl, had a troubled relationship with her stepfather after her parents divorced. Due to constant conflicts at home, she was sent to live with her grandparents, who were in their 80s. Despite their care and generosity, including funding her martial arts training, Kasi remained dissatisfied. In March, during an argument with her grandfather, she used her martial arts skills to injure him severely, fracturing his ribs and leaving him bedridden for over a month. This incident resulted in Cassie receiving a probation sentence and house arrest, which she perceived as a loss of freedom. Her resentment towards her grandparents deepened, eventually leading her to contemplate a heinous act. Cassie later ran away from home and reunited with her 19-year-old boyfriend, Johnny. Concerned about her disappearance, Cassie's grandmother, Wendy, posted a missing person notice on social media. Upon seeing the post, Cassie interpreted her grandmother's concern as interference in her life. Together with Johnny, she devised a plan to eliminate her grandparents. Returning to the house late at night, the pair carried out their plan. Cassie and Johnny attacked the grandparents while they were asleep. Afterward, they forced Wendy to reveal the safe's combination, stealing over $1,000 in cash. They attempted to destroy evidence by moving the bodies together and using bleach to damage any forensic traces. Astonishingly, they remained in the house for 6 days, hosting a party and spending the stolen money while the victims' bodies decomposed upstairs. Their crime spree did not end there. The pair later targeted Johnny's family, intending to harm them as well. However, during an attack on Johnny's sister, her boyfriend intervened, and law enforcement was alerted. The police arrived in time to apprehend Cassie and Johnny, ending their rampage. During the trial, the two accused each other of being the mastermind behind the murders. The court ultimately convicted both of first-degree murder. They were sentenced to life imprisonment, with eligibility for parole only after serving 61 years. By then, they will be in their late 70s and 80s, respectively. A 9-month-old baby was found alone in the street, and the mother claimed she didn't know how he got there. In Utica, New York, the baby was discovered laying in the middle of the road, causing panic among bystanders. A video captured the incident, showing people rushing to check on the baby. One man picked the child up while others called 911. Police quickly arrived and took the baby to the hospital. They found that the baby's mother, Lidrika H. Ford, was not present during the incident. When questioned, Ford stated she didn't know how her child ended up alone in the street, but investigators questioned her credibility and highlighted her failure to supervise. With video evidence and witness testimonies, police established a solid chain of evidence proving the child was abandoned. Ford was charged with child endangerment and arrested. In court, the prosecution presented evidence, including video and medical records. Ultimately, the court ruled that Ford posed a threat to her child's safety and decided to transfer her other children to Child Protective Services. How can a mother leave her young child alone on the street and not even know it? How can such behavior be called love? What do you think? A man was sentenced to nearly 50 years in prison for shooting his girlfriend after learning she was transgender. Taya Ashton was shot and killed in her apartment in Maryland by Alan Price, who knew about Ashton's transgender identity. Ashton was only 20 years old when she died. Price admitted to being in a relationship with Ashton and acknowledged that they had an argument after he found out she was transgender. However, he claimed that he was just trying to scare her with the gun, but Ashton allegedly held the gun and helped him pull the trigger. However, forensic evidence showed that there were no fingerprints from Ashton on the gun, so the judge and jury didn't believe Price's story. He was convicted. In the end, Price pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and using a firearm in a violent crime. He was sentenced to 60 years in prison with 12 years suspended, meaning he'll spend the next 48 years behind bars. What do you think about this case? Share your thoughts in the comments. A moment in court when a prominent chiropractor and his wife reacted emotionally to witness accusations against them after being arrested for multiple felonies involving child pornography. John Boyle is a well-known chiropractor in Kingston, New York, having won several awards, including Best Chiropractor in the Hudson Valley. His wife, Danielle Spofield, is also 33, and they have a child together. It's shocking that someone with such a good reputation and a happy family would engage in immoral acts against other children. The police started their investigation in October 2024 after receiving a tip from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children about an explicit image shared on Snapchat. Authorities seized Boyle's phone and found over 1,300 photos and 811 videos, allegedly depicting child pornography, including images of infants in bondage. He distributed 89 photos via text and used to messaging apps. Both were released on a $200,000 bond each and are set to appear in court in April. This is terrifying. How could they, as parents, harm other people's children? It's tough to consider them good doctors or parents. What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments.
Not my baby!
A 16-year-old girl who didn't like Monday shot and killed 11 people and was denied parole after serving nearly 50 years in prison because people are afraid she might not like Tuesdays when she gets out. In 1979, at a school in San Diego, gunshots rang out for about 20 minutes. Among those who tragically lost their lives while protecting students were the school principal, Burton Ragg, and janitor Mike Such A.R. Brenda, who was shooting from her window at home, also injured 8 students and a police officer. When asked why she did it, Brenda simply said, "I don't like Mondays. This livens up the day." So she used the gun her father gave her to create this bloody scene. In the end, the judge sentenced her to 25 years to life in prison. By 1993, Brenda was eligible for parole, but she's been denied 6 times. The parole board believes she hasn't taken responsibility for her actions and shows no remorse. She'll have another chance to apply for parole in 2028. Many people don't want her out because it's hard to guarantee that Brenda won't end up not liking Tuesdays. What do you think? Should she be granted parole? Share your thoughts in the comments.
You said you wanted to kill him.
A woman has been arrested for killing one of her twin babies, allegedly to launch a fundraising campaign for her own cancer treatment. Tess Britt from Old Smart and her husband Peter were expecting twins in October 2024, but she was arrested days ago for the death of one infant. On December 13, 2024, police responded to a report of an unresponsive 3-month-old at her home. The baby was rushed to a hospital but was pronounced dead, revealing multiple brain hemorrhages and a significant skull fracture. The coroner confirmed blunt force trauma as the cause of death. At the time, the baby was in test care. She was arrested on March 6 and faces first-degree murder charges, claiming it was unintentional. Just after the alleged killing, she started a crowdfunding campaign seeking donations for her fight against stage 4 cancer, raising questions about her motives. Friends noted this was her second cancer fundraiser. Her mother-in-law previously raised about $7,000 for her first illness. After the incident, she appeared unfazed, even suggesting bowling with friends. What do you think about this case? Share your thoughts in the comments.
It happens out of nowhere.
4 teenagers threw a rock from an overpass, directly hitting and killing a father. The victim was Kenneth White, a father of 4. The teenagers were between 15 and 17 years old. Their lawyer argued to the judge that they should receive a lighter sentence because they were minors. The victim's family vehemently opposed this suggestion. Kenneth White's father, devastated, shared that in the past 4 years he had buried his mother, father, and brother, and now he would have to bury his own son.
I've buried my mother, my father, and my oldest brother in the last 4 years, and this is the hardest thing I've ever did in my life.
The judge ultimately rejected the lawyer's request and sentenced the 4 teenagers as adults. The grieving family, who witnessed the entire trial, found some small measure of solace in the verdict. So what do you think? Should juvenile offenders face stricter sentences? Or should we give young people more chances to turn their lives around? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and let's hear what you have to say about this heartbreaking case.
I agree with the family. I hope you die in prison as well. You know, if this was a death penalty state, you'd be getting the chair.
2 teenagers brutally stabbed and beat their roommate with a shovel, then sprayed him with mace before stealing his car to head to McDonald's. The incident started because the roommate wanted to have a discussion about household rules, which 19-year-old Jacob Lane and 18-year-old Willow Reynolds disagreed with. In the end, they murdered their 44-year-old roommate, Adam Reynolds. Interestingly, the 2 didn't seem to think they'd face serious consequences in court. They appeared relaxed, as if killing someone wasn't a big deal. Their status as juveniles often leads to lighter sentences under the law. However, Adam's mother and sister strongly opposed the lighter sentencing proposed by their lawyer. Ultimately, the judge decided that while their juvenile status might typically result in a lesser sentence, the violent nature of the crime changed everything. The 2 could face a minimum of 20 years and a maximum of 100 years in prison. What do you think about this case? Share your thoughts in the comments. A California teenager returned a lost person was rewarded with $3,000. 17-year-old Adrian Rodriguez discovered the purse in a shopping cart at a grocery store and went out of his way to return it to Melina Marquez, whose friend Eliana Martinez had inadvertently left it behind. Melina's aunt received the purse at the door, but confusion ensued as they did not initially catch Adrian's name. Shocked by the incident, Melina took to social media to share the doorbell video, which quickly garnered attention in San Diego. Adrian identified himself as the Good Samaritan and explained his motivations. My mom told me since I was little to always do the right thing, even when no one's watching. Inspired by his gesture, Melina and her friends started a fundraiser, aiming to raise $1,000, but quickly surpassed $3,000 in donations to reward Adrian for his selfless act. This story raises an important question. In a world where good deeds are often overshadowed, how can we encourage more acts of kindness among our youth? A mother left her 2 young sons in the bathtub while she fell asleep, leading to their tragic deaths from lack of oxygen. In December 2022, 67-year-old Kara Alexander was convicted of murdering her 2 sons, aged 2 and 5. The boys' father, Thomas, came to Alexander's home to pick them up and discovered a horrifying scene. Both children were lifeless in the bottom bunk of their shared bed. In utter agony, Thomas ran out, screaming at Alexander, only to find she had already left the scene. Alexander was arrested shortly after. She claimed she had left the boys and attended in the bathtub to smoke illegal drugs and accidentally fell asleep. The post-mortem examination indicated the boys died from suffocation or drowning. Legal documents stated their deaths involved interference with normal breathing, and the prosecutor asserted Alexander's actions amounted to murder, not mere neglect. Ultimately, the judge sentenced Alexander to life in prison, though her lawyer plans to use mental health evaluations to appeal for a reduced sentence. What are your thoughts on this incident? Some mothers simply don't deserve to be mothers. Share your views in the comments.
And I would give anything if I could go back and change it. And I love Michael and Alice with all my heart.
A mother who killed her 2 children is claiming she could be a good stepmom as she applies for parole. Susan Smith, on October 25, 1994, strapped her 2 young sons into their car seats and watched as the car rolled into a lake, taking their lives. She acted out in a fit of rage after breaking up with a boyfriend who didn't want kids. On the day the kids sank into the lake, Susan reported that they had been abducted by a black man, and she and her husband appeared on TV, crying and pleading for their safe return. However, her story quickly fell apart during the police investigation, and she eventually confessed to the crime. She was sentenced to life in prison for 2 counts of murder. While in jail, she has kept in touch with 8 male admirers and even told one single dad that she would make a great stepmom. Of course, she's saying the same thing to the parole board, but her parole has been denied. What do you think? Do you really believe she could be a good stepmom? Share your thoughts in the comments.
Oh my God!
Parents keep their autistic son caged like a dog. Jeffrey and Missy Scanlon from Henderson, Nevada, are facing charges for keeping their 11-year-old autistic son confined at home. The boys' living conditions came to light in April 2022 when an officer visited the Scanlon home to check on several missing children. After hearing banging and screaming from inside, Jeffrey finally opened the door after 40 minutes. The officer discovered a large metal enclosure resembling a jail cell, where the boy was found sitting in a dirty diaper, surrounded by trash and feces. Despite knowing their son had communication and behavioral difficulties, the Scanloness did not seek professional help. Instead, they built the enclosure to manage his behavior, which ultimately led to their arrest. In the end, the couple accepted a plea deal that downgraded the charges to a misdemeanor, potentially allowing them to avoid prison time. Can their actions really only be classified as a misdemeanor? Do you think they deserve to go to jail? Share your thoughts in the comments.
Oh my God!
Parents keep their autistic son caged like a dog. Jeffrey and Missy Scanlon from Henderson, Nevada, are facing charges for keeping their 11-year-old autistic son confined at home. The boys' living conditions came to light in April 2022 when an officer visited the Scanlon home to check on several missing children. After hearing banging and screaming from inside, Jeffrey finally opened the door after 40 minutes. The officer discovered a large metal enclosure resembling a jail cell, where the boy was found sitting in a dirty diaper, surrounded by trash and feces. Despite knowing their son had communication and behavioral difficulties, the Scanloness did not seek professional help. Instead, they built the enclosure to manage his behavior, which ultimately led to their arrest. In the end, the couple accepted a plea deal that downgraded the charges to a misdemeanor, potentially allowing them to avoid prison time. Can their actions really only be classified as a misdemeanor? Do you think they deserve to go to jail? Share your thoughts in the comments. A 32-year-old man was held captive by his stepmother for nearly 20 years, locked in a small room since he was 11 years old. He was only discovered after he set fire to the room in a desperate attempt to escape. The incident took place in Waterbury, Connecticut. On February 17th, the victim ignited a fire in the room where he was being held. When police arrived and forced their way into the locked room, they found the man inside. He reported that he had been forced to live in this confined space since he was 11, allowed out for only 2 hours a day, and claimed he had barely enough food. The victim's stepmother, 56-year-old Kimberly Sullivan, has been arrested on multiple charges, including kidnapping, assault, and unlawful restraint. However, she vehemently denies the allegations, stating, "Absolutely not true. He was not locked in a room. I did not restrain him in any way. I provided food. I provided shelter. I am shocked by these allegations." She is currently being held on a $300,000 bond. The victim's identity is being withheld for privacy reasons. What do you think about this case? Share your thoughts in the comments. A 3-year-old boy heroically saved his great-grandmother during a medical emergency, demonstrating remarkable bravery and quick thinking. Bridger Peabody, who is just 3 years old, was at home with his great-grandmother, 77-year-old Sharon Lewis, affectionately known as Cheesy. The incident occurred outside their Denver home when Lewis fell and hit her head on the concrete steps, leaving her bloodied and desperate for help. With her phone left in her car, Lewis realized that only little Bridger could assist her. Encouraged by his great-grandmother's call for help, Bridger ventured out into the dark, despite his fear. On the security camera footage, he can be heard reassuring himself as he opened the car door, the interior light illuminating the phone within reach. He successfully retrieved the phone and called for help, allowing emergency services to arrive promptly. After receiving 22 staples in her head, Lewis is now recovering thanks to her brave great-grandson. If you think Bridger's actions are amazing, don't forget to like this video.
I agree with the family. I hope you die in prison as well.
17-year-old boy lived with his parents' bodies for weeks after killing them. 17-year-old Nikita K.I. SAP has been charged with murdering his stepfather, Don Meyer, and his mother, Tachina. He's currently in custody and has lived with their bodies for weeks. On February 11, 2023, Don Meyer's mother called the police from Massachusetts. When the police arrived, they found 2 bodies. Don Meyer had been shot in the back of the head, while Tatyana had multiple gunshot wounds. Evidence shows that the 2 had been dead in the house for weeks while Nikita continued to live under the same roof. Nikita was eventually arrested in Kansas while driving his stepfather's vehicle, and a handgun was found inside the car. Although Nikita is facing murder charges, the defense argues that there's a lack of evidence to support the accusations. The judge has set bail at $250,000. Nikita's motive remains unclear. Do you know more details about the case? Leave a comment below with what you know. A healthcare worker has sparked outrage after posting a video on social media where she dances on the head of a disabled patient. The person in question is 19-year-old Lucretia K. O'Wyon, who works at SNL Healthcare in Atlanta, Georgia. In the disturbing TikTok video, K. O'Wyon is seen balancing on the patient's head while recording the act. This incident took place in the patient's home, where K. O'Wyon was hired to provide care. The video quickly went viral, drawing strong reactions from the public and healthcare professionals, with many deeming her actions unprofessional and disrespectful. Concerns have been raised about the treatment of vulnerable patients and the standards of care in the medical field. Despite facing criticism, K. O'Wyon defended her actions, claiming the video was shot from an unusual angle and that the patient felt comfortable with her presence. Police will get involved, and if K. O'Wyon's explanation turns out to be inaccurate, she could face serious charges that may lead to jail time and the suspension or revocation of her medical license. What do you think about this incident? Share your thoughts in the comments. This is the moment a 23-year-old woman was rescued after being kidnapped, beaten, and threatened with imprisonment for 4 days. Her mother broke down in tears upon seeing the body cam footage of the rescue. The ordeal began when 33-year-old William Mozingo offered the young woman a ride, then kidnapped her and confined her in his garage for brutal captivity. During this terrifying time, the victim suffered severe injuries, including beatings and threats to her life. The garage owner reported suspicious activity to the police, leading to the investigation. Officers located the kidnapped woman, who was found with extensive bruising and severely dehydrated after 4 days in captivity. Mozongo had been arrested 4 times in the past 15 years for kidnapping and assaulting women, but received only an 18-month sentence. In a recent hearing, the judge sentenced him to 25 years in prison, considering his criminal history and the victim's experience. However, many, including the victim's mother, believe this sentence is too lenient, as it doesn't adequately address the harm done to her daughter. What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments.
Oh my God!
A mother gave birth in her apartment and then used a metal letter opener to stab her baby, resulting in the infant's death. In Greenville, South Carolina, a 31-year-old mother, and No, has been arrested for allegedly brutally killing her newborn son. On the evening of March 7, No's boyfriend called 911 for emergency services. When the paramedics arrived on the scene, they found the baby already lifeless. No chose to give birth at home without seeking medical help and subsequently inflicted brutal violence on the child. After cutting the umbilical cord, she placed it in a garbage bag. The letter opener she used has become a key piece of evidence in the case, indicating the abnormal and cruel nature of her actions. No is currently facing charges of child abuse resulting in death, and prosecutors allege that her behavior demonstrates an extreme disregard for human life under South Carolina law. If convicted, she could face 1 year to life in prison. It's hard to believe a mother could do something like this to her own child. Friends say No was suffering from postpartum depression and felt overwhelmed during childbirth, leading to a mental breakdown. So what do you think? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Florida mom arrested for trying to sell daughter for $500. In Florida, 24-year-old Jessica Woods was overheard expressing a willingness to sell her daughter. After receiving a call from a concerned individual, police investigated and discovered that Jessica was facing hardships related to her relationship with an ex-boyfriend and was trying to find emergency housing. In her conversations with the police, she showed concern for her child, but also admitted that she couldn't handle taking care of her. Jessica's daughter was found outside in cold weather without shoes or a diaper, and her condition was alarming. Ultimately, police decided to intervene and took the child away. Jessica was later charged with child neglect and abuse, and the court set her bail at $250,000. Currently, Jessica's daughter, Giovanni, has been placed into foster care and is living in a safe environment. What kind of desperate situation would dock the mother to try to sell her own daughter? What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments.
I agree with the family. I hope you die in prison as well. You know, if this was a death penalty state, you'd be getting the chair.
This woman walked into the courtroom with a smile on her face, but after hearing the judge's verdict, she's definitely going to leave in tears. 24-year-old Erica Jenkins posted photos on social media. She lured Jorge Ruiz and Juan Pena to a park with the intention of robbing them. Her brother ended up murdering both men. So Erica didn't think she'd face a heavy sentence from the judge. She was all smiles in court, but as soon as she heard the verdict, her smile instantly vanished. She was sentenced to 60 to 100 years in prison, essentially a life sentence behind bars. But she blames everything on her brother, insisting that she was just trying to rob them and that it was her brother who killed the 2 men. The judge called this crime one of the most brutal the court has ever seen and criticized Erica for always shifting the blame onto others. So, what do you think about this sentence? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.
Sheriff's office! I can hear kids crying!
Teen throws newborn out of window after giving birth. In Paris, 18-year-old American teenager Mia McQuillan has been arrested for giving birth in a hotel room and throwing her newborn out of the window. According to an anonymous hotel employee, the incident occurred around 6 a.m. on Monday. The employee recalled, "It was a nightmare from the start. The baby was wrapped in a towel and thrown out the window. When emergency services arrived, the baby was still alive but was pronounced dead shortly after being taken to a children's hospital in Paris." Mia has been identified as a student from Oregon who was on her gap year trip. Mental health experts believe that Mia was unable to acknowledge or comprehend her pregnancy. Following a preliminary investigation, police immediately sent Mia to a psychiatric hospital after her arrest. Mia McQuillan is currently facing charges of child homicide, and the case is being processed within the French judicial system. While she is in custody, the specific outcome of the trial has yet to be determined, and the court will make a final ruling after reviewing all evidence. What do you think about this case? Share your thoughts in the comments.
A heartbroken mother was sentenced to prison for setting her daughter's rapist on fire after he was released from prison. Maria's daughter, Veronica, was sexually assaulted by their neighbor, Antonio Cosme, in 1998, when Veronica was just 13 years old. Antonio was punished with a 9-year prison sentence, but he showed no remorse. During a parole period in June 2005, he approached Maria at a bus station and taunted her, asking, "How is your daughter now?" Faced with Antonio's lack of regret, Maria felt a mix of anger and fear. To punish this evil man, she went to a nearby gas station, bought a gallon of fuel, found Antonio at a bar, poured gasoline over him, and set him on fire. As he burned, Antonio cried for help, and by the time he was taken to the hospital, he was diagnosed with 90% of his body burned. He died a few days later. While Maria avenged her daughter, she was also sentenced to 9.5 years for murder, which was later reduced to 5.5 years after an appeal. This mother evokes both sympathy